Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I am making this video and I'm so excited to make this video. I have been wanting to make this video for a really long time, and so I'm making this video now because recently I've been getting so many people asking me how I knew when God was calling me to ministry. And maybe you are wondering the same thing. Maybe you're feeling the call of God on your life into ministry, and so I just want to share my testimony and give you the signs that God was giving me in hopes that maybe God is giving you the same thing, and these can be a confirmation to you. So I just pray that this video encourages you, blesses you, and just gives you the clarity and confirmation that you need if God is calling you into ministry. The fact that you're already watching this video goes to show that God has already placed it on your heart about the calling for ministry. So I have a lot of notes written down, so if I am looking down, it's because I am looking over my notes and making sure that I don't miss anything. There's a lot to my testimony, and I am just gonna be so transparent with you guys on how God was giving me the signs and give you specific examples, because those might be showing up in your life right now. Before I get into the signs that God was giving me, I first wanna say that we are all called. If you are a Christian, you are called to be a minister of the gospel. No matter where you are, whether you're in retail, whether you're a salesman, wherever you are in the workplace, that is where God has placed you for a reason, to be a minister of the gospel. So delight yourself in God first. Pursue a personal relationship with him, and then he will give you the desires of your heart. A lot of us get so caught up in seeking the will of God and seeking what our calling is and seeking what our purpose is, but I promise you, as long as you put God first and seek him and pursue a relationship with him, he will tell you what your calling is at the right time. He will reveal to you what your purpose is. You don't have to go seeking it out. There are so many people that get called into ministry by doing nothing. They're making their bed and then they hear the call of God. God will make it known when you are called. Psalm 37:4 says, "Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you your heart's desires." When I first was seeking God about the purpose and will for my life, I kept praying this and quoting it back to God, asking him to give me the desires of my heart. And as I continued to seek him about my purpose for months, I thought of, well, okay, what am I good at? And what are the current desires of my heart? So I started journaling this out, and I was like, what do I love doing? What am I good at? And I thought, okay, well, I love journaling. It's been something that has been a part of my life for years, even as a child. I always kept a diary. I loved storytelling. I loved writing, and I also loved inspiring and helping people. And I loved creating content that moves people. Those were the things that I was already doing before God called me. And so while I was seeking and while I was waiting to hear God's answer about what my call was, I just kept doing the things that I was already doing, the things that I knew I was already good at, the things that I already had a desire to do. And so all of those things were a passion of mine. So I said to God one day, I was like, okay, God, these are the gifts that you clearly have already given me. These are the desires that I already have on my heart. So allow my desires to align with yours, God. Allow my desires to line up with your will for my life. And if any of these desires and passions that I have that I'm currently doing, if they do not align with your will for my life, then take them away, Lord. Take the desires away. Take the things that I'm already doing and let me have no passion for those things anymore, and replace them with what you want for my life, Lord. And he never took them away. Those desires actually just got stronger. So I knew that I was onto something. And during this time, when God started revealing to me and calling me to ministry, I was still searching a job, because the very first thing that God told me to do when I got saved was quit my job. And I have a testimony of how God provided for me for 6 entire months without a job. And during those 6 months is when God was training me, molding me, preparing me for ministry. So one of the very first signs is you'll be waiting and you're like, God, what am I supposed to do for a job? And maybe you got fired, maybe you got let off from your job. And that's one of the first signs that God will do, is he will take you out of your current environment, and because he wants to get you alone, he wants to prepare you, he wants to train you. And so that was the very first thing that God did, was he told me to quit my job. So once I quit my job, I was like, okay, I need to apply to another job. And so I started to applying to all these other jobs during the time of the waiting, of figuring out what my next step was, what my purpose was. And every single time I applied to a job, I didn't get the job. And obviously we know now why. It's because God wanted me in full-time ministry and to focus just on him. With all that said, when I was asking God to line up my desires with his and use the gifts that he's given me for his kingdom and for his glory, and when he didn't take those gifts away and they only got stronger, I was like, okay, I'll just start using the gifts that you've given me, and I'm gonna just apply them to only glorifying you. I'm not gonna just make random videos of content anymore. I'm gonna use them to make content about you, God, about Jesus. And so I started using my gifts in a way to make it all about Jesus, and next thing you know, that turned into my ministry. I was in ministry before I even knew what that was. It wasn't until months later that God revealed to me in dreams and confirmations from others that I was called to full-time ministry. We'll get to that in the video, later on in the video. But specifically the prophetic, that is what God was calling me to, was prophetic ministry. And God revealed that to me because, like I said, I started to seek out jobs, and God wanted me to only focus on ministry. And so the first sign that God gave me was desires. You will feel like you have this strong desire to help people, and you will just have a hunger to grow closer to God and learn more about the Bible. And that's one of the things that God did when I first got saved. He put this like supernatural passion in my heart to hunger for God's word and to learn more about him and to watch sermons. Like I replaced watching Netflix at night with only sermons. YouTube was my TV. I stopped watching movies. I stopped spending my hours and time scrolling on social media. I deleted social media for 5 months, and I only wanted to get closer to God. That was the only desire I had, was to learn about the Bible, to read, to worship, to praise. I all of a sudden I had this hunger to go to church. I never ever had a desire or hunger to go to church like this before. Like growing up, I actually hated going to church. I never wanted to go. I would fake sick to go to church. And we all know that that's the enemy, because the enemy knew the call that I had on my life. And so he was doing everything in his power to try to stop me from knowing what the call of God was on my life. And so when God puts those desires on your heart, those desires are from him. He placed them there for a reason. And it will just be a burning passion. You won't be able to let it go. You just have this burning passion to help others, to want to learn about God, whether it's helping others with something that you've personally walked through, or just a hunger to preach the gospel in general. And so how this even started for me is, if you've been following me for some time and you know my story, you know my testimony, I was in a really bad, toxic and abusive relationship. And that is actually what drew me to God, because when I got out of that relationship, I clung to God. I'm like, God, I need you. And sometimes it takes things like that and situations like that to bring you to rock bottom before you cry out to God. And that's exactly what God did, is he allowed me to go through that toxic relationship because he knew that that was the only way that I was going to finally call out to him. And so once I did, that is what turned into my ministry without me even knowing, because when I got out of that relationship, all I wanted to do was help other women and other men even get out of toxic relationships and to see the signs of narcissistic abuse. And because I knew that if God saved me, I wanted to help others see that there's hope and encourage them that they can get out of their toxic relationship as well. So that's pretty much the story of how I even started ministry without knowing that it was ministry. And like I said before, is I love journaling. And before I was saved, I would always journal for years, that I just wanted to inspire others and help them with healing. And that desire was already placed there by God. Before I was even saved, I still had this burning desire to want to help people, to want to heal people. Like I had this desire to really want to help others. And so I just always had a passion for wanting to help others in some kind of way. And that desire, like I said, was planted in me for years before I was even saved and before God called me into ministry. But because I wasn't saved before, I was using so I still had the gifts. Like you are still born with gifts that you're going to use eventually for God's kingdom. But because I wasn't saved when I had these gifts that I was using my gifts for the new age and not for God. So before I was saved, I was using my gifts to heal people, but through new age practices and beliefs and all kinds of healing mechanisms and healing rituals that were not in God's word. They were all based in pagan just religion, and that's why nothing ever succeeded. Every single business that I had that was not on the foundation of God, it just crumbled and it never succeeded because I wasn't in God's will. So when I finally got out of my toxic relationship, I sought God for help because I was just tired of living my life in these patterns that I could not break. And so I knew that I needed God. And so when I saw God move in my life, and after I got saved, I had this burning passion and hunger to learn about God and read the Bible. He was putting those desires on my heart, and because God used my toxic relationship to now want to help others get out of one and heal. And so, like I said, I started having this passionate desire to share my story on TikTok. So that's how my ministry kind of started. Is I just started sharing on TikTok. I shared a little bit on Instagram, but it was mostly TikTok, and I saw the fruit of it immediately. As soon as I posted a video on my TikTok, my first video that I ever posted was talking about me getting out of this relationship and how God saved me. It got 16,000 views. My first video. I went from having 0 followers on TikTok to literally having 10,000 within like a couple of days. And I'm like, okay, well, clearly this is working. I'm seeing fruit from this, so I'm gonna just keep doing that. And so I was doing that for almost like 8 months before God even called me into ministry and confirmed that I was supposed to do ministry. I just saw the transformation God was doing through me and in me, and all I wanted to do was to help others in the same way. God wanted to use my story to reach people. So God could be using your story to reach others. And I saw a quote once on Instagram that said, "Your ministry is found where you've been broken." And that hit home because it's true. My ministry started from my brokenness because God knew that He would use it as a redemption story and to give hope and encouragement to others that He could do the same in their lives. So the second thing, so after desires, the second thing is dreams. Now, not everyone will have dreams, but God has gifted me with dreams. And I am so thankful for that because that is how I started realizing that God was speaking to me. And I have a lot of dream screenshots from my phone notes, so I will pop in photos as I'm talking, but God was revealing the most to me through my dreams. He was showing me that I was speaking on stages. He was showing me that I was starting a YouTube. He was showing me that people were confirming that I was supposed to be an evangelist. He was confirming prophetic ministry. He was just confirming all, like it did not stop. Like it was literally like overwhelming. I would wake up in the middle of the night at 5 a.m., like all throughout hours of the night, because God was waking me up and He wanted me to write them down. And I still have all of them. There's like a whole folder of things that God was speaking to me and giving me dreams about. So when I started having those dreams, I would start to look them up. And this is how God was training me how to interpret my dreams. I have always been a dreamer, even before I was saved, even when I was in the new age, even when I was little. I have had dreams my entire life. And so that was just a gift that God gifted me with. And so God was revealing to me through my dreams that I was called into ministry. So once I was getting all these dreams, I'm like, okay, what do these mean? Like some of them were very obvious. Like I was literally having people talk to me in my dreams saying that I was called to be an evangelist, that I was called, and I'm like, okay, I don't even know what that means. Like I didn't know any like theological terms. I didn't have the wisdom for that. I literally had just started. I was barely even going to church at that time. And so I'm like, I don't even know how to begin this. Like, what is ministry? Does that mean I have to work in a church? Does that mean I have to go to Bible college? Does that mean I need a theology degree? Like, I didn't even know what that looks like. I came from an influencer world when I lived in LA. I came from like corporate world when I worked in timeshare. I was never in the like church world. I was never in the ministry environment. When I started having these dreams, I have a dream book, and this dream book really did bless me and encourage me. I don't really use it that much anymore because now God has trained me to learn how to interpret my dreams without the book. But honestly, I will put the link in the description box because maybe you're just beginning your journey, and this book really did bless me and help me to interpret my dreams. And so I will link that down for you guys if you want to check it out. But I was going through that book and just looking at the interpretations, and every single time I had a dream, when I looked it up, it just said ministry, prophetic ministry, large ministry, evangelist, all these things. And I'm like, okay, I'm clearly getting a message from God that He is calling me into some kind of ministry. I didn't know how to even go about this, but I knew that God was calling me through my dreams. God will also have others tell you and give you confirmation about it. Others will see the call on your life and confirm it. So I have multiple stories about this, but when I was seeking God about my purpose, I had already had this feeling and knowing in my spirit that God was calling me to the prophetic ministry, but I wanted more confirmation. I would continue to ask God for confirmation, and I didn't want just the confirmation to come from what He was showing me. I asked God, I said, God, if this is really what you want me to do, allow someone that I have no idea who they are to confirm it to me and tell me. And so I started going to church every single Sunday again, and I was just having these like thoughts that someone would just have a prophetic word about me and speak from the stage and be like, you in the green jacket, God told me. Like I had all these ideas of how God wanted to speak to me. And I'm like, God, I want to experience that. And one day I was praying, it was like 2 in the morning, and I was on my knees crying and praying, and I just felt the call. I knew God was calling me. And in that moment, I get a DM on Instagram from this girl. I'm sure many of you guys have heard of her, but her name was Taylor, and she just randomly messaged me. We never spoke before this at all. She just randomly messages me, and she said, I just felt led to tell you that you are called to the prophetic and to the prophetic ministry, something along those lines. I'll post in the photo somewhere. And I was like, and she's also a minister of the gospel, and she also lives in Nashville, but I was just like, and that's exactly, and I wrote her back, and I was like, wow, I am so like mind blown at what God just did, because I'm literally on my knees praying and crying and asking God to confirm to me through another person who sees the gift on my life. And they had just randomly watched my stories that day, and we didn't even talk after that. That was the only conversation we ever had. It was just so cool. And God kept doing that. Other people would see the gift on me. Random people that I met at church would tell me that God has big plans for you. God is going to use you mightily. God is calling you into the ministry. And that happened so many times before I finally was like, okay, God, I trust what you're showing me. So I promise you, you will not be in confusion. It will be very clear, and God will just give you a knowing that you will know. You don't need to get confirmation from man to know that you are called by God. Let me say that again. You do not need to get confirmation from man to know that you are called by God. And I have a personal story and example of this that we will get to later in the video, of someone who was highly anointed, who was a minister of the gospel, who was considered a prophetess. And it was actually very discouraging what she said to me about the call that God placed on my life. And I had other people like giving me mixed feelings and doubting what God was telling me. And I'm so glad that I did not listen to them, but I will get into that later. But if you get mixed feelings from others and what you feel God is saying to you, this can cause delay and discouragement. Don't let what others say bring doubt to what God is saying to you. If you feel that God is saying something to you, do not allow others to discourage you, because we only need confirmation from God. Only you know what God is saying to you. And so, like I said, I'm so glad I didn't listen to the ones who doubted what God was telling me, because then I never would be where I am now. I would have never started my YouTube channel, and I would have let fear keep me from stepping out into what God was calling me to press into. So if God has called you, he will give you the encouragement and confirmation that you need to keep going. And that's really all you need. But most of the time, others will see the gift on you and they will tell you. And the third thing is, once you start getting these little signs here and there, confirmation is next. God will just keep sending you confirmation after confirmation, and this could come in a form of a prophetic word. Maybe someone sees the gift on you and tells you, hey, I see the call of God on your life, like you are called into the ministry. Someone will speak to you, or it could come in the form of a dream, or oftentimes God will speak to you and convict you through his word. He will make it known to you while you are reading the Bible. It's as if a verse related to your calling jumps out off the page and shakes your spirit. You will read something and the words will jump off the page into your spirit. And this is exactly how the Holy Spirit will prompt you and speak to you. When I was already getting signs and dreams from God, I prayed and asked God to speak to me in his word. And I opened my Bible. Like, I just remember one night I was praying on my knees and I was like asking God, I'm like, God, if you are really calling me into ministry, make it known. Speak to me through your word so I have no doubt about this. And I remember opening my Bible and I was like praying, and then I just like let my Bible flip open to whatever page it was gonna land on, and it landed right on the first page of Jeremiah chapter 1, and I knew immediately that God was speaking to me, because it flipped right to this page and the words immediately jumped out at me and into my spirit. And these are the verses that I read, and I highlighted them, and it said, the word of the Lord came to me. And the bold title on my Bible says, The Call of Jeremiah. The word of the Lord came to me. I chose you before I formed you in the womb. I set you apart before you were born. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. But I protested, oh no, Lord God, look, I don't know how to speak since I am only a youth. Then the Lord said to me, do not say I am only a youth, for you will go to everyone I send you to and speak whatever I tell you. Do not be afraid of anyone, for I will be with you to rescue you. This is the Lord's declaration. And I knew immediately that that was God speaking to me through his word, because it is no coincidence. First of all, it's no coincidence when it comes to God, period. But it's no coincidence that I was praying, literally praying after I was already getting these signs of dreams and getting all these other signs and desires. I was praying and I said, God, speak to me through your word. I let the Bible flip open to whatever page it landed on, and it landed right on that. And it literally said the call of Jeremiah. So I knew that God was speaking to me. If God calls you, then you are qualified. Don't worry about what to say. God will give you the words. And it wasn't just because I read this where I'm like, okay, I'm called to that. It was a knowing in my spirit that God was calling me to the prophetic, because he's calling Jeremiah to be a prophet. And I was so drawn to that. And that came to pass because he says, I appointed you a prophet to the nations. And that is the one verse that really resonated with me and really just like I felt deeply that in my spirit. And it came to pass because with my book that launched a couple months after God called me to ministry, I launched a book and it is now in over 10 countries all around the world. My writing, the gift that God gave me, prophetic writing, my dreams, everything that I saw in my dreams, that came to pass. My book reached over 10 countries. And then God told me to start my YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel, people have sowed into my ministry all around the world, in Canada, in the UK, in the Netherlands, New Zealand, all around the world, reaching the nations. And that's exactly the call that he was telling Jeremiah, is he said, I appointed you a prophet to the nations. You will just feel drawn to learn about the call. Whatever God has called you to do, if it's pastoring, you will have a yearning to learn about pastoring. If you are called to the prophetic, you will be drawn to the things of the prophetic. And I started buying all these prophetic books and watching these prophetic videos on YouTube and watching sermons on the prophetic and just having this like strong desire to learn about it. God was drawing me where he was calling me. So whatever you are called to, whatever you feel God calling to, he will draw you to that place where he wants to use you. And God will also send you signs to confirm it that you absolutely cannot deny. You won't be able to explain it. You will just know that you know that you know. You just know God is speaking to you, and he will send confirmation after confirmation. When you feel the call and ask him in prayer to confirm it, he will not hesitate to confirm it to you. I promise you, trust me, it will be loud and clear and evident that God is speaking to you. And the next sign is, this is not a fun one, but isolation is another sign God is calling you. He will manipulate even the slightest circumstances to get you to a place where you are alone with just him, so he can teach you, train you, and prepare you. He also does this to purge things in your life that will harm your calling. This can be friends, environment, and even family. God did this to me and got rid of so many things in my life. Like I lost friends, my parents didn't understand, I had to quit my job, I moved out of the city that I was in. God was calling me to move back home for a little bit, and during that time, that is when God was preparing me and training me. I was completely isolated for months and months and months, and I am so grateful for that isolation period, because I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for that isolation season. But God had a purpose in that, and I made a video on this the other day. I'll link the video in the description box or up here, but about how God did not reveal the call of ministry to me until he purged the people in my life that would pollute that calling. He doesn't want anything getting in the way. This is when God is refining you and molding you and getting rid of old mindsets and behaviors and renewing your mind to prepare you for the ministry. The isolation is just preparation. Now, these signs that I just mentioned are not exhaustive by any means. There are a number of ways that God can speak to you. These were just the main ones that God confirmed it for me. And God knows how you understand things, so he could reveal it to you in a completely different way. But he will make sure that you know, that you know, that you know. You won't be confused if he is calling you into ministry. Also, don't try to convince people of the call that God placed on your life, because those people might not see it or understand. Their eyes might not be opened. And this is also a tactic of the enemy to try to discourage you and stop you from answering the call. Ask God for wisdom on who to share this with. Be careful who you share this with. And you're gonna, when you first start and you start getting all of these confirmations and you don't know where to begin, you're gonna have doubts sometimes. And that's normal. When you first start the journey, you're gonna have doubts like, who am I to do this? I'm not qualified. I don't have a ministry degree or a theology background. I'm not even involved in church. And you might even have people who are godly trying to discourage you. Like I said before earlier in the video about how I'm gonna get to this, about a personal example from someone who was discouraging me. This is the example that I want to share, is because the devil can even use anointed people. Even if they're anointed, it doesn't matter. We see that in the Bible in Matthew 16:23, when Jesus rebukes Peter and says, "Get behind me, Satan," because Peter was trying to stop Jesus's mission from going to the cross. Though just a moment before, Peter spoke as a messenger of God, he then spoke as a messenger of Satan. Jesus knew that there was a satanic purpose in discouraging him from his ministry on the cross. And Peter was not even aware that he spoke for Satan. So don't let people discourage you, even if they are in the church. So this personal experience that I have is when I felt that God was calling me to ministry, especially the prophetic, I was so excited, and I kind of had this like spiritual mentor, I guess you would say, and I was really excited, and I was sharing this with her, and I'm like, I think God is calling me to the prophetic ministry, and I know that he's calling me into ministry, and I was just so excited because I was wanting to share. And I was wanting to share with everyone, oh my gosh, God called me. And she was like, be careful, like don't start your ministry yet. You know, I don't really know. I mean, I know that you're called to ministry. I know I saw the gift of healing on your life, like, but the prophetic is really like, I don't remember exactly the words, but she said a long message, and I remember for weeks it kept me feeling so discouraged. And then I started questioning if that was really God that had called me to ministry, and I started thinking like, did I make this up? Are my dreams really from him? Like, did I really hear what he was saying to me? And so do not allow, because I remember even telling this girl, I was like, I'm gonna start my YouTube. I already have the name for it. I already have the videos that I know God. And remember, this was literally months and months and months after God called me into ministry. So God had already been training me and preparing me. And she's like, I would give it another year before you begin and before you start posting videos. And I just knew that that was not from God. I knew that that was the enemy using her to discourage me, because it did discourage me. It didn't give me exhortation. It wasn't encouraging. And so if you are going through that, or you might experience that on your journey in ministry, don't let that happen to you. Do not allow others to discourage you. Yes, seek wise counsel, and yes, get godly advice. But if someone can't see what God has called you to, and maybe questioning that call and giving you mixed feelings, just pay attention to what God, seek him in prayer and ask him for wisdom, okay? So also, while I was going through this journey, my parents at first were not understanding the whole not having a job thing, because I was the only one in my family who was on this spiritual walk with God. I was just feeling anxious and lazy, and I was so used to the hustle and bustle of life. So doing nothing in this waiting period where I didn't have a job and I didn't know how to begin my ministry, it seemed so foreign to me. But God was training me during the waiting. It was preparation for ministry. During the waiting and seeking God, I knew what God was telling me. And so when God calls you, he will make it known to you. Trust me, you will feel the call, and God will confirm it. He will keep confirming it until you know you are being called. And once I knew I was called, it started showing up everywhere. God was just making it super obvious. Like, I would go to random places and there would just be a sign, random people talking out loud, sitting in front of me at a coffee shop, talking about ministry. And then I would walk around this lake that was in my hometown. This was like my place of prayer. And I would go on these prayer walks. And for 3 days in a row, there was a plane in the sky that just kept spelling out Jesus. For 3 days in a row, every single time I went there, it was the same plane spelling out Jesus in the sky. And I just knew that God was speaking to me. And random things like this just kept happening for months and months and months. And so after God calls you and confirms it, you might get excited, like I did. You might get excited with the call and then get frustrated because nothing is happening. And you're like, I don't even know where to begin, how to start. But do not rush it. I'm telling you, do not rush it, because there is purpose in the waiting. If God has not given you specific instructions to do something, don't try to rush it. Don't try to figure it out on your own. Allow God to instruct you on what to do, because this is where God is molding you. This is where he's training you. I was in the waiting for 5 months before stepping out into what God was telling me to do, which was launch my book and start my YouTube channel. They weren't big instructions. It was very simple. So sometimes when we get this call of God, we're waiting for him to be like, okay, you're gonna go here, you're gonna be on stage, you're gonna have a microphone. Some things are so small and they start out having baby steps, because through the baby steps is where God is training you to get to the next level. My ministry didn't really start until a few months even after that. It took probably a whole year almost to get the hang of what God was telling me to do. So when you are in the waiting, God has a purpose. It's not just because he wants you to wait. You aren't just waiting for no reason. God is training you in the waiting. He can't just throw you into ministry. He needs to prepare you and train you. We see this in the Bible many times when God will call them and they don't begin their ministry until much later. Just like Jeremiah, when God called Jeremiah, he did not fulfill his call in his first year or even in his first 10 years. His 40-year ministry had several different phases, and taken together, they fulfilled God's call. We see this in David's life too. God trained Jeremiah and David until they were ready. It will be different for every person. So it might not be the same for you, how it was for me, and so on and so on. It's just like when you get hired at a new job, you go through weeks of training, or even sometimes, you know, months of training, depending on what your job is. Just like when you're in the military, they don't just throw you into war or into battle. They go through months and weeks of training. And you can't just get hired and thrown into the first day on the job. You wouldn't know what to do and you would not be prepared. You would fail and get fired. So just like a job where you go through training, God is taking you through training while you wait. And even after I was called, I was doubting what the next step was, but I just kept remembering what God showed me in my dreams. And that was starting a YouTube channel. God doesn't give us the entire plan all at once. Everything that he tells you to do is literally just a stepping stone to where he is going to take you in ministry. And I had that dream that I posted earlier. I had that dream to start my YouTube channel in December of 2022. And God did not call me into ministry until a couple of months later in February of 2023. So God was just telling me my first step was using my YouTube and social media as my ministry. It first started with my TikTok, and then writing a book, and then starting my YouTube, and then creating a godly coaching business to help others heal out of their toxic relationships. And every single part of that all formed into my ministry. God was perfecting my writing with that first book. And before I wrote that book, I had a passion for journaling. Then my YouTube, God was teaching me and training me how to use my gifts with starting with YouTube and how to speak and how to deliver a message. And then God was training me in my coaching calls to learn how to minister to others and pray for them. And eventually I know that God will use what I'm already doing to bring me to the place where he's already shown me. And one day I'll be traveling and I'll be doing it with a team. God has shown me already what the bigger vision is for this ministry, but I just have to be obedient and keep taking step by step. And God will do that to you to keep you going. Sometimes he might show you the full outcome, the dream, maybe in your dreams, maybe in a vision, and maybe you'll just have this desire and this passion to want to have this thing in the future. But don't get frustrated when it takes longer than you expected, because even though that is the desired outcome, it's going to come to pass. But just because what you're doing right now seems mundane and not that big, these are just the stepping stones to get to where God is taking you. Habakkuk 2:3 says, "For the vision is yet for the appointed time. It testifies about the end and will not lie. Though it delays, wait for it, since it will certainly come and not be late." And also Psalm 105:19. "Until the time his prediction came true, the word of the Lord tested him. Until the time came to fulfill his dreams, the Lord tested Joseph's character." Before God will fulfill the vision that he gave you, he will test your character. There is an appointed time for everything. And in ministry, it's just one day at a time. It's one step of obedience at a time. It's one video at a time. Everything is working together to fulfill God's ultimate plan in your ministry. When I was going through this entire journey and I wasn't seeing anything taking off, and my YouTube videos were getting 5 views, and my TikTok videos, it was like not growing, and I didn't know what to do, the one verse that I clung to was Zechariah 4:10. And I want this to encourage you. When you start your ministry, just write this on an index card or a piece of paper and just post it in your room or in a place where you do prayer. Do not despise the day of small beginnings. Well, friends, that is all I have for you today. And I just hope and pray that this video blessed you and encouraged you to keep pressing in and follow God's leading. If this video blessed you and you feel led to sow into the ministry, the links to give will be in the description box, or I will pin them in the comments. Thank you guys all so much for supporting the kingdom of God. God has big plans for this ministry, and I'm just so glad that you are here on this journey with me. We're all in this together. And I also wanted to mention, I'm so excited for this, I also wanted to mention that I am now offering one-on-one mentorship calls. It's $50 for 30 minutes face-to-face on Zoom, where I can pour into you and teach you the wisdom that I've learned on my journey being in ministry. Whether it is to pray for you or help guide you in life, God put this on my heart to start offering these calls. And as a lot of you guys know, I am a certified Christian life coach and have used it for relationship coaching, as that's how my ministry started when God saved me from my toxic relationship. But now God wants me to use my gifts to serve his people, which is you guys. So if you are interested or have any questions before booking, you can email me. That is also in the description box below. And that is all I have for you guys. So God bless you guys, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.